Hi, welcome back, folks. We're the Cigar Ambassadors, and thank you for tuning into our channel. I'm your host, or one of your hosts, Louis Starr, and next to me is my good friend, Bob Bylsma, and we're here to share and explore in the cigar culture and its allure. And today we have quite an interesting topic to discuss, as many of them have been, but this one really will have us talking about the differences in retail shops and cigar lounges. There's a big plus and minus on either side of that, and we're just going to have a nice conversation about it, something that you can relate to, and our experiences with either one of those or both. For me, it's been quite a quite an entertaining ride, and walking into certain lounges as well as just a retail shop. So, Bob, what's your take on the difference between a retail shop and a cigar lounge, or something that's a combination thereof?
Well, to me, a retail shop, as opposed to a lounge, is a place you can go in, you can buy a cigar, but there's no place to sit and enjoy your cigar there. I honestly cannot remember the last time I was in a quote-unquote retail shop. So I really couldn't probably tell you much more about those shops. The last ones I visited were years ago in Los Angeles. Largely small shops, not a huge selection, and not something that's attractive to me. To me, if I'm going to go to buy a cigar, I'm usually not looking to grab and go.
Right.
I'm looking to have a place that I can enjoy it, and that really gets us to the lounge question.
Right.
And there, as you know, because you've visited a lot of lounges, I've visited a ton of lounges. They all have different setups and different dynamics, and that's really what we want to talk about today. Is the different, from our experience, the different types of lounges we see, how they're set up,
Right.
and then some of the different dynamics that creates.
Yeah, that's a very interesting topic for discussion with us, because I've been to a couple of places that were just retail, and like Bob stated, they're more so the grab and go. You don't get a chance to take your cigar that you've purchased and sit down somewhere in there and smoke. They don't have the accommodations for that. Not something that I would venture to or make it a point of interest for me, unless I was on the road, didn't bring enough cigars, need to go grab something and keep moving. Well, there's a place for that as you're traveling. However, for the most part, when I'm somewhere new and I'm on a business trip or something of that effect, or just a vacation, I might want to go sit in the lounge, because the hotel that I may be in or wherever I'm staying, there's no smoking allowed. So I want to go to a lounge. I want to kick back. I want to, sit down and relax and have a good conversation, if that's my flavor for the day, or be isolated in my thoughts and sit down and read or do something of that nature. The dynamics in lounges is important too, because each lounge has its own design, if you will.
And personality.
And
I don't want to knock retail shops, because there are people who really don't want to sit with other people and smoke. And if that's their thing, God bless them.
Right.
If your thing is that you want to go pick up cigars, go smoke at home, I would look for something that has a decent cigar selection.
Right.
But it's very different than picking a lounge.
Yeah.
And as we said, they have different dynamics. What are some of the dynamics or setups of lounges that you've seen in your experience?
Well, the ones that I'll go with the ones I enjoyed the most to the ones I didn't enjoy as much. The ones I enjoy the most don't have a lot of televisions in them in the core or centralized location of the lounge. They usually have an area where, if you want to watch TV, a sporting event or something of that nature, you can go sit and partake in that. And the others have sort of a conversation pit where you can sit and you can have discussions with some of the other cigar smoking customers that are there. So that works for me, but then I might want to drink. And there are some lounges that have a full bar, or at least a decent bar, and you can get a nice beverage, an adult beverage, or you can get a nice cup of espresso or cappuccino, whatever you flavor and savor, and sit back and enjoy that as you're pairing it with your cigar. I look for the aesthetics of a lounge, if they have comfortable seating. Obviously, if you're going to sit down for an hour and a half or 2 hours, you don't want to be in a cramped, hard, uncomfortable chair.
Been there.
Been there. I've sat on chairs that were made for a backyard patio and not for a lounge, but the conversation with the people that were there was good. So I endured that and enjoyed my cigar. However, that I'm looking for a lounge in particular, and I've been in the more exclusive lounges where it's a club with members only, and you sit down and all the members are in the room, and you have your host, if you will, that will make sure that your cigars are lit, your ashtrays are clean, you're getting the right attention that they provide as a service. That works for me. I don't like being in lounges where someone's hovering over you, trying to pay more attention to you than you actually want from them. Empty the ashtrays, make sure my ashtrays are clean, make sure the air circulation is good, so that if 20 people are sitting around smoking a cigar, I'm not smoking 20 cigars. Been there.
Air circulation,
Air
is
circulation
an important component.
Right.
I want to add to that. There are a lot of lounges that have both public and private
Right.
memberships. So you can, if you're just a member of the public, you can go in. They've got an area to smoke those cigars, or often more ornate
Right.
private lounges. What I don't like about that is when the public areas are so Spartan that they're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We talked about those uncomfortable seats. I can think of a couple of lounges that fall into that category that I prefer. Generally, I would prefer not to go to because of that. Because I want to be comfortable
Right.
in that environment.
Right. Well, the selection of cigars too is essential, right? So if you don't bring your own, and you read many articles about how it's not proper etiquette to bring your own cigars into a lounge or to an area where they may allow you to sit and smoke, that's because you don't take a steak to a steakhouse. You don't bring your own and say, okay, and if you do happen to bring your own, be prepared for a cutting fee. Some places charge you anywhere from $5 to $10 to bring your own cigar and smoke it. I frown on that in most instances because you want to try to support your brick and mortar. If you're going to a brick and mortar store, even if you bring your own, buy one or two sticks on the house, and then smoke yours. At least you made some donation to that proprietor to keep their doors open so that you can continue to go there and buy cigars. But when you go to a lounge and the size or selection of their cigars varies, you're looking for a good selection, not necessarily a huge selection, but a good selection. There's some lounges where they have the most premium cigars that you might desire, and that's a good thing, and that might be just a cabinet. And then there's some that have a half-size humidor where, again, a good selection of cigars at a good and decent price, and you can go and pick out a good smoke.
If I can add one piece to the don't bring your own cigars to the lounge.
Yes.
Remember that your retailer is having to pay rent on that space. He's not making money by the cigars that are getting smoked in
No.
that space.
No.
That is a service that he's offering to his customers.
Right.
So be a customer.
Be a customer.
Because he's not making any money off of that.
Right. So if you think they're getting rich by doing it, I know a story personally of an individual that opened up a cigar business thinking that he was going to strike it rich overnight, and 2 years into it, he was a little disappointed because he was not a cigar aficionado, if you will. He just wanted to be in the business thinking he can strike it rich quick. That's not why you get into this business, at least not from what I've known with a lot of folks that own a brick and mortar. They get into it for the enjoyment and of the cigar and providing a service to their clientele.
And generally in that kind of a setting, you don't end up with a good lounge experience.
Right.
From my
No, you're absolutely correct. So that's sort of what I look for primarily in a lounge. What about you, Bob?
It depends. The one thing you didn't add is a lot of lounges that don't have bars will let you bring in your own alcohol. I kind of like the dynamics of having a full bar. If you ask me what my general preference would be,
Yeah.
give me a full bar
Yeah.
with one single TV behind the bar,
Okay.
so that if there's something to watch, you can watch it, and a big lounge that's separated from that TV with some conversation pits. That is my ideal lounge. That way, if I don't, and a decent humidor.
Okay.
And that way, if I don't want to watch TV, I don't have to. If I don't want to drink, I don't have to. I can be separated from that. But if I do, it's got all of those pieces together for me.
And what about music?
You know, if you don't have a TV, music, soft music is nice.
Okay.
I think, you know, we've enjoyed everything from classic rock to a night of Motown.
Yes, we have.
And so that I you know, as long as it's again not dominating.
Right.
What I don't want is the TV's volume up dominating a room.
Been there.
I can never think of an instance where that would be my choice, and there are a lot of lounges like that.
Yeah.
But there are times I want to watch a sporting event, you know, World Series, Super Bowl, something like that, and I want to be able to smoke a cigar.
Yeah.
So I will seek out a lounge that has a TV, even though that's not my general go-to thing.
No.
So I think it kind of depends on what your flavor is of the day. You know, do I want to go somewhere where I can have somebody serve me a drink and smoke a cigar, maybe watch something on TV, maybe not, or do I just want to have conversation?
Well, yeah, it depends on how you're feeling. At least for me, there are times where I've gone to the lounge, and beautiful lounge, by the way. I was in Los Angeles, and it was very well appointed, and there were a couple of people there, but I didn't sit with them because I wanted to be in my own thoughts. And the guy said, "Hey, you want to turn the TV on?" No, I don't want TV. I don't want conversation. I'm in my own thoughts right now. I had some things I needed to process. And he was fine with that. He respected that. And that's what I like. Just, you know, you can ask if I want to join the conversation. And if I say no, that's my option. And not be made, not be ostracized because of it. They act like, oh, you're just being standoffish. You don't want to join in with us. No, this is how I feel today. Any other day, I might have wanted to join the conversation because that's what I felt like then.
So size may matter.
Size does matter.
Depending on how you're feeling, you might want something that's bigger, that gives you space.
That gives you options.
Or if you're feeling like being part of the conversation, a lounge that isn't quite so spread out.
Right, right. No, so, you know, there's a lot of options out there. Again, these are just our takes on what we look for in going to a lounge. You know, the top 3 things, if you will, if not 5. Let's see. We have bar. We have selection of cigars. We have the size and elements of the lounge, if you will. You know, the placement of certain areas. 1 television, if that's your pleasure to watch a sporting event.
And that it does not dominate. To me, the volume, I want the volume turned down.
Right.
I don't want that noise. I don't care if there's, I can think of a particular lounge where there was 1 television, but it was so loud that there was nowhere you could go to not hear it.
Well, let's not forget the one that we both went to, and they were, 20 screens on the wall, and we were sitting about as close as we are now, and we couldn't hear each other?
Yes.
Yeah, you know, beautiful lounge, but it was not aesthetically what we were looking for.
With a full bar, I might add.
With a full bar and a decent cigar selection. However, it didn't hit all of the points. So there's a lot that you will find out there, but we tell you as a suggestion to explore and find out what the different variances are with the lounges from state to state, city to city. You're going to find a lot of different things, and you're going to find a lot of similar things.
And I think that's the point, which is, don't assume that all lounges are the same, because they all have their own different nuances, or sometimes not nuances, to the way they're set up. But they all have their own personality as well. And let's talk a little bit about the personality of a lounge.
Well, of the people or the lounge itself, because I got both.
Well, take your pick where you'd like to start.
Well, you know, with some lounges, I've been in some that were very eclectic. And by that I mean the seating was anywhere from a shoe sign stand to a barber's chair to lounge chair, and all in one lounge. mind you. Very, very weird. Then I've gone to a lounge that I didn't even know I was in a lounge because there were so many things hanging from the ceiling that I thought it was one of those swap meet stores or something. It was just ridiculous. It's like, well, where's the humidor? I had to go meander my way through the menagerie of things just to get to the humidor. And then, after I was there for a minute, I said, you know what, this is kind of cool.
I mentioned a shop to you like that in the Houston area that is a coffee shop in the front.
Yeah.
Then off to the side there's a retail clothing store, and in the back there's a humidor and then a private lounge with public seating outside, which is kind of nice, but very, very different.
Very different, very different. Now, as far as the type of people you're encountering in the lounge, well, you'll see us. It may not be us directly, but you'll see some characters that are like us.
The names and faces may change, but we'll be there.
Yeah. I've gone into at least a couple of lounges in the past 2 years that were quite interesting. It was almost a deja vu moment. As I walked in, got my cigar, sat down, started to enjoy it, I looked over into the conversation pit, and the folks that were there were having the same discussion almost to the topic of what me and my buddies were talking about just the day before. It was hilarious. And then the proprietor came over and said, hey man, you want to join in the conversation? I actually said, no, respectfully, I already had that conversation. I had that one yesterday. These guys are just different, but they're talking the same thing that we're talking and ribbing each other like we were ribbing one another. And there are times where I've gone and sat into the lounge, and depending on the characters that come in, if they have a sense of humor, oh man, my ribs are hurting when I leave out of there because we've laughed so hard. There was just so many jokes going on, and we realized one of the things that we have as a condition in the lounge that we frequent is leave your job title outside the door, leave your troubles and worries outside the door, don't bring it inside because that's not what the environment's for.
And leave your economics.
And leave your economics.
Outside.
And there are no political discussions, or very little. We try to stay away from that, and we try to stay away from having religious types of conversations, only because people are very sensitive about the things they're passionate on, and passionate about, I should say, and we don't want anyone to walk away with a hurt feeling.
No, I think I mentioned to you, much as you said, being in a lounge, this was several years ago, being in a lounge in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and you could go around that lounge as the conversation went on and say, that's the same person as so-and-so in our lounge, and you could just go around the whole room and do that. And so you see a lot of the same personalities. The names and faces change, but the characters don't necessarily.
Right.
Although there are some lounges that are friendlier than others. I've been to lounges that, there was no desire to include you. It was very, very cliquish. Yeah. There are other lounges where, and I'm thinking of one in particular that. You have different groups in different areas. The computer geeks are over here. Then you have the people that are working over at another section, and then you have the conversation pit. And it's real interesting to see that dynamic play out.
It's a very interesting dynamic, but you'll see that in most lounges. And again, depending on the size of the lounge, you will get that. There's one that I had gone to in North Carolina where they had 2 conference rooms that were set aside from either side of the humidor and the retail area. Then they had conversation areas outside with fire pits. So you basically get your choice of what type of environment you want to sit in at that location, which was good. And if you wanted to watch television, there were 1 or 2 quiet quads where they had a TV up so you and your company could sit and watch whatever sporting event or whatever have you was on that you desire to see, which is good. Again, there's so many different variables in the lounges that are out there. And again, I just encourage you to just explore a little bit and find out, what your favorite types of lounges are. And if it's in your own hometown, well, there you have it. But if it's not, when you travel, you kind of get an idea of where you want to go. Like when we went to Las Vegas a couple of years ago, we spent, half a day just driving around town looking at different lounges?
We did, and we found our favorites. Yeah. And there were different aspects of them that made them favorites in terms of the particular personalities of that. I remember the last time I was in Houston, I did 20 lounges in 20 days. That wasn't just Houston. I did some of those in California too. But we visited a lot of lounges.
Yeah. So it gives you a good idea, a good barometer for what's out there, and then you start to build on what you're looking for and where to go when you're in a particular mood to sit down and have a cigar. It's a very interesting journey, I might say, and we're not done yet. We have some lounges that we plan to visit once the COVID-19 starts to get under control, so we can get out and do more site visits. But this is a lifestyle, folks. It's a culture, and it's something that we're very passionate about. Been doing it for a long time. Don't plan on stopping anytime soon unless we get a doctor's recommendation that we should stop smoking a cigar. But
Then we may still go to lounges.
yeah, we still may go to lounges. You know, there's so much more conversation we can have, and we will have when we get into more of the deeper dive on the variables in certain lounges and retail shops too, because there's a lot of finds that you would get in a retail shop that you may or may not find in a lounge. Cigars, accessories, and stuff of that nature. And you know what? We picked up some nice clothing items from the ones that had a retail shop with clothing, be it shirts, hats, or whatever have you. Just something that's a good memento for the areas that you visited. And those things you'll treasure and you hold on to them. And you know, I'm playing with this lighter, and I think between the two of us we may have about 110 lighters and about as many cutters, and we want to get into that a little bit more with you as we show you, talk about the different types of cutters and the features of those cutters as well.
Well, and I'm looking forward to the time where we will talk about, we both have our favorite lounges around the country.
Right.
And I'm looking forward to the time where we're going to talk about those.
And
because they are favorites for a reason.
yes, they are.
And I'm looking forward to being able to talk about that and share with people who may be in, whether they're in Texas or Pittsburgh or Seattle or Vegas,
Right.
Where we would recommend you go and why we would recommend that.
Well, folks, we want you to stay tuned because it gets better. And we want to thank you again for tuning into our channel on YouTube. Again, we are the Cigar Ambassadors, and I'm your host, Louis Starr, and this is Bob Bylsma. We appreciate your comments and your feedback, and we look forward to seeing you again on our next show.